So, hey everyone, welcome to the Hitchhiker's Way podcast. Today, our guest is the founder of PopSmartKids, and her name is Priyanka Raha, and she's amazing. So, hey Priyanka, how's it going?
Hi, Aishwarya. Thank you so much for having me on your show. And hello, everyone, viewers of Hitchhikers podcast. I'm doing great. Thank you for having me. And how are you today?
I'm totally fine. I'm super stoked to talk to you. Let's
Likewise.
start with
Likewise.
what PopSmartKids do right now. Can you tell us about what you do right now in a nutshell and how PopSmartKids work?
Absolutely. So, PopSmart Kids Academy, right now in its current form, teaches K through 12 students, which means from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade. We teach students how to write, speak, and communicate effectively. Now, how that translates into services is that we offer writing classes, public speaking, and debate classes for students throughout all these grades. And we actually offer online classes as well. We have international students. We are based in the US. We do have two centers here in the city of Issaquah and in the city of Kirkland, which is right outside of Seattle. I'm sure Seattle is a more familiar city, but we have students from Dubai, we have students from India. So we do offer them online. We do offer all these different classes online as well.
All right, that's really great. So now let's go back to your story. Like, can you give a bit of a background to yourself, like your childhood, your upbringing? Can you talk about how good of a childhood you had? Like, was it good or was it traumatic? They say that most people are shaped right now because of their childhood, right? So, what was in your case? How was it like?
Oh, that's a great question. My childhood was happy for the most part, but you're right. Like, we learn things right from the point that we are born up until right now, today, right? We constantly learn. And that is also the ability that helps us grow, to stay curious, to keep that humble mind. My childhood was happy, but I was also raised in a lower middle class family. My dad worked two jobs, and my mom was a stay at home, and she took care of everything else that a household needs. So the reason I share that is because I was taught from the very beginning that, and I grew up in an environment where we had resources enough to meet our needs, not wants, like needs versus wants. So we had resources enough to meet our needs. I got a good education. The reason I share that little piece is because right from the very beginning, my parents were super particular about education. So they were very particular about like doing your lessons, learning, staying curious, being
Indian
good with your
parents.
subjects. Yes, Indian parents. But I think that in a way stayed with me. So I think that's why my path to starting a company that is in the education industry was not straightforward. So I started my career as an engineer. I did my MBA. As you can see, I kept going to school, back to school. I worked and then kept going back to school. So education has always been really important to me. And I started teaching as a substitute teacher. I worked with piecework as a volunteer. I taught students from Belize. So education has always been very near and dear to my heart. And that has shaped and brought me to where I am today, which is what I do is I help students bring their wonderful words and imagination onto paper or onto how they're expressing.
That's awesome. Can you tell me how Pop Smart Kids started? Like, how did the idea emerge? I've heard how the idea emerged from one of your interviews, but I just wanted to hear your version. Like, it was your version, but I just wanted to hear from you, right?
Of course, thank you. That's my favorite story, actually. So, like you mentioned, and like I was saying, like growth is a very integral part of how we go through our life, right? We stay curious, we grow, we adapt to situations and circumstances. So, PopSmart Kids Academy also had a growth and a pivot like that. When I really started this company, I started it, and you can still search the app. So, I started it as a company to help parents engage their children in a meaningful and in a curious way with digital apps. Because I'm very pro STEM. I think that technology, if we can use it well, and we should teach the next generation, we should teach our children to use it the right way, can be extremely powerful, right? So that is where it really started. And the reason I created an app that could help students tell their stories is because I truly believe that writing does not get as much credit. And there is definitely a misconception that you need to learn how to write well only if you want to choose a career as an author, or you want to just become a writer even in corporate. But that is not true, because writing is communicating. So I have friends who have gone through deep STEM career paths, did their PhD, and all they talked about was how they had to communicate all the experiments that they were doing and kind of present it to the world. If you think about students as they kind of go past 11th, 10th, 11th, or 12th, they are trying to write, they're trying to communicate their life stories, college application essays, and even beyond that, when you get into, when you start your career, you have to be able to write, express. And I have seen many a times that requirements or, the intent of the communication is lost just because it wasn't clear, it wasn't concise, and it was not written well. So I quickly pivoted from that tech platform and realized that at the core of that tech platform, the skill that I was trying to teach the next generation, which is how to communicate, which is how to use words well, which is how to write, that is where the need is. And PopSmartKids Academy had to pivot, and we went from a product-based company that had apps in the market to a service-based company, which just means that now we offer these writing classes, public speaking classes, communication classes to kids in that age range.
I think it's awesome. Like, writing is something fundamental. Like, whenever I write emails, like, I think, man, I wish I knew a better word to communicate my vision. Like, it's just so fundamental. Every work that I do right now, it consists of writing. And I love your vision.
Thank you. And you're absolutely right. Doesn't matter which career path you choose, doesn't matter what you do, from like
Writing is
emails to
always
everything.
going
Yes,
there.
it's always there. Always. I think more so we need it today and that is a whole another conversation, I know, with the advent of AI powered writing, right? So
I think
we need
even
more
though
focus.
AI is good at writing, I don't think right now it's like at its best. Like, it cannot communicate the actual emotions of the humans who are writing the emails. Or when you read an email from a human, if you read a human written email, you can find it's human written because it shows emotion, it shows mistakes, which makes the writing wonderful. But AI, it's kind of professional. You can still change the tone through prompts, but
Yeah.
I still think human writing is never going to be replaced.
Yeah. Since you brought it up, I love this conversation because I'm always, like I said, I teach students to stay curious, which means I teach them to adapt. So I feel like AI powered writing is almost like, think about like I'm oversimplifying, I know, but think of it like a calculator, right? You need to really know the basics to be able to use a calculator. So when you are thinking about like a child's progression of learning math, they have to learn how to do the basic addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and all other operations. But when they get into like 10th grade, 11th grade, and they're doing far more complex computations like integration, calculus, then they need a calculator, which just says like by this time they know how to do it. So they know how to use it. So I don't think that anyone should just directly use AI powered writing because it, like you said, it lacks emotion. But I think more than that, it feels robotic. Like I know when I read essays from my students, I know when, any
It's
of, yes, because the other thing that an AI powered tool will not do is bring your tone, like the tone of writing, right? Like the way you will write an essay and the way I will write an essay, it's not about right or wrong, but it's about, like, it will be different because you will bring your own perspectives, your own life experiences, and I will do the same. And that's what lacks in an AI powered tool. I do believe that students after a certain age or after a certain grade, and I'm not saying that has to be like when they go beyond 16 or 15, but I think once they have learned the basics of writing and analyzing text and novels, they should be taught how to use these AI powered writing platforms well. Because if we don't teach them, they're going to do it wrong. And that's just a whole another conversation, and we'll just get into so much trouble there. But yeah.
what's your favorite writing AI platform?
Right now, ChatGPT, I have used Bard, but I think
I
it kind of, yeah.
I understand Bard is not that good at writing, but I feel like GPT is good.
Yes, it definitely has way more, like it can really listen
It
to
can.
you, can respond better to the prompts. I've done, like, I'm always curious, right? About, yes, I'm curious about, definitely about like words and writing and text and all of that. But I'm also curious about what's on the horizon, what's coming up. And I know there are a few other AI powered platforms as well, but I think these two are kind of popular right now.
So, I heard that you had kids. You're a mom.
Yeah.
So, as you're a mom and an entrepreneur, do you think the most creative personalities, the most innovative and creative personalities, are created because they had underdisciplined childhood? Do you think creativity, do you think chaos actually plays a role in creativity? Underdisciplined childhood, in the sense they tend to do abnormal things that parents won't let the children do.
That's a very interesting question. I do think that creativity needs an outlet. And I think it matters how we shape a child's thinking as they're doing things. Just, I'll give you a simple example, right? Like a lot of the time, my kids have paint all over the kitchen counter and they're just doing art. And I think that's okay. But also, I feel like there's that idea of guiding them, not so much as curbing the art, the creative side of it, but also guiding them how they can be, how they can channel their creativity. So just seeing, like, let's stay with the same example, right? So if they're like just throwing paint at the paper, they don't know it yet, but it seems like they're really passionate about colors, they're really passionate about painting. So kind of taking that, instead of saying, oh, you're doing it wrong and you're making a mess, that I feel is curbing their creativity. That is not helping them. That is not helping them learn. And that is not inspiring curiosity in them. Instead of that, I think what, as parents, as teachers, or as mentors, what we can do is kind of guide them a little bit, how they can, instead of throwing, what can they do to put those colors on the paper? It's not so much as keeping the mess out. I don't quite believe in that, but it's kind of teaching them how they can take that passion for colors and paper and throwing colors into something that can have meaning.
You did answer my question, right?
Okay.
But there should be boundaries for kids, right?
I wouldn't call those boundaries. I almost think like, how can we channel that? How can we find that where this chaos fits? Right? Like, yeah, how can I channel it? Like it's almost like a river kind of flowing at you. You don't want the flood, but can you make a dam? Can you do things like that? I like to think of it like that. And I think we underestimate kids, in the sense that I have heard it so many times growing up and even now, is that, oh, it's just a child. It doesn't understand. They don't understand. But they do. They do. They understand. They listen. Words have meaning. So how we train them, how we guide them, how we help them stay curious, will actually help them shape their future. And it's not so much as less disciplined, it's about like, how are we helping them kind of channel those? And there are things that you cannot do, right? Like you cannot be disrespectful. You cannot use words that you're not supposed to use. Those are like hard boundaries. But if we are talking about creativity, like how you can, then there is also, even if we think about words, I have encountered so many times, they end up using words that they're not supposed to use, which just means that they're curious. But as teachers and mentors, I don't think our job, and even as parents, right? I don't think our job right there is to punish them. Absolutely not. I think it is our job to tell them why they cannot use these words and to channel them in a positive way. Like when in my class, when students use words that they're not supposed to, it's like, I understand that you are really curious and you want to learn more words. It's good that you're learning new words, but it is really important to know what is the proper usage of a word and where you can or cannot use words, right? So that's my take on learning and staying curious.
That's an awesome way of,
Oh,
you put
thank
it
you.
in a really good way.
Thanks.
So let's get back to startup side. And I heard that you told me that you were pretty active in the startup community in Seattle. So I just have a startup question. If I'm a founder, if I'm an early stage founder who is trying to start a business where my competitors are really big and they have a competitive advantage over me because their organization is pretty good established before, but I'm thinking of I'm thinking of starting a startup and competing. For example, let's say you have Lyft and Uber, you have Spotify and Apple Music, right? Lyft, like Uber was pretty established before Lyft came, and yet Lyft is pretty successful. Lyft became pretty successful. Is it good to take the opportunity to build a business when somebody has clearly competitive advantage over you?
Short answer is yes, but the long answer is, when you're starting, it is good to have an eye on like what my competitors are doing. But when you're starting, the first focus should be what your customers are telling you. I think the first thing that I would advise anybody who is starting is to go talk to the people that you think are going to buy or listen to or use your service and product, and just ask them, like, when you have to. So let's stay with the example that you brought up, right? Uber and Lyft. So you have people who are commuting and people who are frequent travelers, which means for work, they have to get to the airport maybe every 2 weeks. What do they use? And what do they like about it? What do they don't like about it? And I think that is what should inform the product or the service in the initial stages, and not so much as what the competitors are doing. I am not saying like do not research them or find out about them, but I don't think, I would highly discourage anyone who is starting to start with just the eye on the competitor. I think the focus should be like the parents. Sorry, I keep saying parents because that's my target customer. But just keep an eye on what your consumers or your customers need. Because the moment you talk to them, they are going to tell you what's missing. They are going to tell you that, oh, I just like their service, but last time I called them, I had to wait for an hour. So analyze those. So kind of staying with the example, which just means is that there aren't enough cabs in the area, which means there's your opportunity. You can provide them a service that will come and help them in straight 5 or 10 minutes. They don't have to wait, right? So yeah.
Customers.
Yeah.
So you also have, speaking about customers, when PopSmartKids started, when all startups start, they mostly do cold emails. That's the drill, right? You have to do cold emails, cold calling, you have to speak to the customers as you told, and you have to reach out a lot of people. Yeah, I think you would have sent a lot of cold emails. So have you ever sensed a pattern on what worked for you and what didn't work? did you how would you advise a founder or someone like my age is trying to put, I mean, with a good cold email, what do you think should be essential for a good cold email?
So first of all, I would like to say that I have never sent a cold email. I did not. And the reason for that is that there is no one single answer. There is no one size fits all, right? The one thing that I did was because if it's a cold email, it's usually lost. They're going to see it as like, I don't know this person, just like spamming me. I'm going to just go hit the reported at spam, and that's it. That's gone forever. Like that's just gone into a black hole. The one thing that I have done is, for my case, right? So I have gone and done pop-ups, which I still do, which means
you
if
met
there is,
people in real life and you arranged meetings, right?
yeah, I just talk to them in real life. In the initial days, I would walk to bus stops and I would just stand there and I would say, hey, I'm a mom and I have 2 kids and I live like 2 blocks down, or I live like 20 minutes away, and I just wanted to understand what kind of services or classes do your kids go to and what's missing. Do you have 5 minutes? And a lot of those people will say no, but some of them will say yes. Whoever says yes, that's your people, which means they have interest in you. They are trying to talk to you. And I am not saying that is the only way to do it. The reason I did it that way is because mine is B2C. My business is direct to customers, right? So it makes sense for me to reach to those customers. The other thing it's important is because these are also customers that are not afraid of, I think price point is not the problem here. Like they're not trying to find the cheapest service that is available, but what they are trying to find is a service that will actually serve them, because remember, it is education for their kids. So these are passionate parents, which parents usually are. Like they want to find the best for their kids. So that is why the other thing that really works well for me is referrals. So if someone has already used my services, you ask them to be your champions, be your ambassadors, and say, okay, can you talk to parents? And you can incentivize those as well, right? You can have a referral program.
So, did you monetize the service from the beginning, or did you give it to a parent and ask them to use it for a while and then you monetized it after,
I monetized it in the beginning, but I also added value, and I'll tell you a couple of ways. So one is that for all my writing classes, and I still provide those. So for all my writing classes, parents can come in, or their children can come in and actually just take a trial class. No commitments. They just have to sign up. They show up and they sit down in a class and they learn. It is a really good way for the students to actually feel what the class looks like, for the parents to understand what it needs. And they also get, at the end of every trial class, they get a list of kind of things that they would be expecting if they joined the full class, right? So it's a way to just see what the class is like. And they also see okay, long-term, what this looks like long-term, what am I getting out of this class? So that's value added. The other value added things. Now, I know I said I don't cold email, but I do have subscribers, right? And the way I have subscribers, the reason I have subscribers is because I actually sent out a lot of value added complementary things out into the world. Like I have ebooks that parents can get when they sign up for my newsletter. I have ebooks with book recommendations. I have a whole list of writing prompts. I have a whole list of things they can do with, like I said, I'm always, I'm very pro technology. Yeah, values and then curiosity. So I actually have a list of ways that parents can help their children manage screen time and just building a healthy relationship with screen time. So these are all value added services which they get for free. And that is also another way of not just building that trust, but just, sustaining that trust, keeping it going.
Sustaining and communicating the vision you have, it's really passion. It really shows passion. Like, I just want to do this, I'm providing, you give, and then you ask, right? It's just,
Right.
you
And
give a
like I
lot of
said,
value.
like for this particular, and I think for any services, it's a lot of trust that the customer is also putting in you as a founder, right? So it just makes sense for them to come try out and see, okay, this is the free, like I saw what it means, and now I can commit with a price point. So make sense as a business model.
All right. Okay. I will ask that question later. I have a question, but
Okay.
it's not for the interview. I'm really curious.
Sure.
So you told me that you spoke to a lot of customers early on. How many customers did you reach out like that and in person, like a day or in total? How many customers did you reach out?
The very beginning, it was about 50, and I'm talking about at the very beginning. But don't really have a count of how many I have reached out since then up until now. Like I'm constantly meeting new customers, right? Which is why I really like these pop-ups, because in these pop-ups, I'm actually at an event. So for example, this Sunday, I was at a robotics event for middle school and high schoolers, which means the parents were already there. And as a company, we were one of the sponsors for that event. So I am continuously meeting new parents and talking to them about the services. And that is, again, like building that trust. You know, people buy from you, people don't buy from the company. And this is true for startups and small business owners. Like people don't buy from the company, but people buy from you. Once they see you as a person, then they have that trust. It's like, oh, there is a real person behind all of the companies and all of the website and whatever they see online.
I think it's true because founders are people who are, don't take me wrong, founders are crazy people who are first selling dreams to people. Like they are just selling dreams and their vision to people, and they're just asking the people, the customers, to pay for the vision that they are going to give, the value they're going to provide, the consequence of the dream they're selling, right?
Yes and no. There is also finding that many a times it will happen that it's you're talking to these people and they're not the customers because they don't feel the need, and that's nothing against
They
you.
don't
It's just
resonate
that
well with.
they don't have the need for it, like the pain point we talk about, right? Like they don't feel the pain yet, so they are not going to buy your service or product, which means they're not your target customer even though you have spoken to them. So it doesn't matter like what that dream or that vision is, but it's not their pain point. Once they have their pain point, then they see the solution, and then they see the vision, and then they see all of that.
Like you've done in-person meetups and pop-ups, and that means word of mouth would have spread a lot. Actually, I can see from the students who attend PopSmart Kids Academy. They're international. One kid from you told one kid from Dubai and
Yeah.
so on. So, at what point the pop-ups? Do you think the pop-ups and more online? The online events and the offline events actually created a, a good word of mouth. Like from, I know you didn't do cold emailing. Like, when did you realize that you had good word of
A hard one to track. And I believe in data. Usually, when we have parents sign up and I meet them while they're dropping off their kid in class, I do ask them like how they learned about us. So I do have an idea of, because a few parents tell me, oh, I heard from this particular person, right? And even at pop-ups, sometimes I have done this pop-up so many times that sometimes I'll end up meeting someone who has heard it from someone else. So I don't really know. I What I'm trying to say is I don't really have the exact data as to how many of these are word of mouth, how many of the customers that are coming to me are word of mouth. I do have a very approximate data for that. But I also think that I am never going to stop doing these pop-ups because it is how it is, at least not in the near future, because it's a really great way to
communicate.
meet your customers in real life. Because again, see, this is also a very, if you think about it, these parents are going to send they're investing in their kids' education, right? So these kids are going to come into the class or come into an online class and spend an hour every week with an instructor. So the parents have to make sure that this is the right fit, that this is the right service, and then they have to understand that what they're getting has value. So that's why like it has been a really great marketing tool for us at least.
That's really great. So, what do you think is the biggest win for Pop Smart Kids? I know it would have gone through a lot of pivotal points, but what do you think is the biggest win out of all?
Oh,
And what kind of and you have to tell me what kind of insight you learned from the biggest win. Why did you achieve it, and what kinds of things did you do to achieve it?
that's a great question. We do have a few awards and, media mentions and a lot of podcasts under our belt. But the biggest win, and I feel, and the other instructors in my academy, they feel the same way, is when actually the students tell you, and this might sound silly, but the students actually don't want to leave. I have so many instances like that where, and those are again anecdotal data, right? Like you can't really capture those, and you can't really translate those into data. But I have students whose parents are waiting. So the class is from 5 to 6 p.m. and the parents are there like in front of the classroom, and they're waiting to get their kids back with them. And these kids are like, oh, I'm just writing, let me write this like last 2 sentences. So that's when I feel like, yes, this is the win. This is why I get up every day in the morning. And I absolutely agree with you, entrepreneurs are crazy people. We leave our corporate, like I would say, comfortable as compared to like
Yes,
the hours and
comfortable
everything.
zone.
Yeah, but that is what gets me, and I'm pretty sure, like, speak for everybody else who does this, is that gets us, that gets me up in the morning every single day when kids actually really love the classroom. There are times that the kids will actually go on board. Like I have different kinds of boards in the classroom. One is where the instructor is going to teach, and then I have like creative boards on the side, like blackboards where the students kind of write and get creative. So they will write like, this is the best class ever. I love writing. And they will make these paintings. They will make this art, which is literally written. I love writing. Writing is so cool. Writing is fun. So I think that is the biggest win. That is what success means to me.
People love your product. People love your product the most.
Yeah.
That's actually the dream of every founder, and if it's achieved, it's like it's super, it brings immense happiness that you've not created this before, but it exists right now because you did something before. It People like the kids write on the boards that writing is the best thing because you created something, you took some steps, and you did some hard work, and you created something that the kids love, and because of that they love writing. It's like creating something from thin air is the most hardest thing, right?
Yeah, it's enjoyable. It's what I love. I'm passionate about it. But yeah, it feels really a win when students love that.
It's awesome. So I have to ask this. So most founders commit mistake when they're employing people for their startup. In the early times, like the first time you're employing someone, you make a mistake because it's your first time, obviously. Has that happened to you, and what did you learn from it? What would you look for someone whom you're recruiting for if you made the mistake before and you don't want to make the mistake again? So what kind of things would you look for?
That's a great question. Yes, hiring and finding the right talent that aligns not just with the skills that you're looking for, but also like the values and what you're trying to build is extremely essential, right? It's really different. So when I was working in a bigger company, I had hired multiple times. Like I had teams, I had hired, but it's very different when you are running a startup and you are running lean. There are so many intersecting factors that hiring by itself is challenging. But when you're running a startup, it just gets a little bit more challenging because of all these intersecting factors. It's like you're working on a very tight budget and you are actually in the initial stages. You're trying to find people who are more aligned with your vision. because you know that these people have to go that extra mile when needed, right? And yes, we all make mistakes. So I did have someone on my team in the beginning. I was desperate, and like I said, in the very early days, like just when I had started in 2018, my vision was to create an app. And the app actually still exists on Google and iTunes, Apple app stores. It's called PopSmart, right? It's a writing application. And there is a trivia app, PopSmart Trivia. But I did hire someone I just went by the interview, and I was desperate. I wanted to do it fast. I was trying to move fast. I was trying to kind of follow the early to market and quickly to market, all of those principles. And I did not quite vet the person properly. And that's on me, because there is also the point where you realize that, these are the skills that you would need, and you do not have time for them to ramp up. You want these people to come in and start from day 2. So all of those things did not work out, and we did have to find someone else and letting go. There's that other piece as well, right? You learn from this, and also you learn how to be kind and empathetic while even letting people go. Letting people go just does not need to be brutal. And that is another thing that I strongly believe. Like, letting people go, it just means that this particular job did not align with that particular person's skills. There are jobs out there. And that is also means that you are being kind to other people on your team. Because if you're letting go someone who doesn't fit well with the rest of your team, you're actually being kind to these other people on your team, because they work with this particular person who doesn't align. And it's not good or bad. It's just that the skills don't align, and that particular person will be happier and far more productive somewhere else. So yeah, just letting them go. And also, one of the things that I learned is that for a startup, like in the initial days, it makes sense to have a trial period, so that that person can come in, and there is a way for both of you to know, like, if you guys can work together in a team. Yeah, so that's kind of that story.
Let's talk about AGI and singularity. Let's say 5 years or 6 years from now, AGI is developed, and right now AI is actually taking a lot of jobs, and AGI is going to be a huge thing, and it still is going to replace a lot of jobs, and it's going to bring new jobs. As you're someone who is like empowering kids through your startup, how do you think the future humans would position themselves to be useful, and how PopSmartKids would provide value when AGI or something similar to that is existing tomorrow? Like, let's start with the first question. How do you think humans will position themselves as useful when AGI is?
There are 2 parts to the question, right? So first of all, AGI does exist today, right? We have it around us. We are using it all the time. And when I think about that, it's very similar to what I was talking in the beginning. It's like adapting to the changing times. I think if you think about jobs and careers 80 to 90 years ago, they were very stagnant. And what I mean by that is the career path looked like, okay, a student goes in, gets all their degrees, and then finds a job, stays with the job, retires, like happy, successful, fulfilled life. There's nothing wrong with that. But things have changed. And here is the thing that I feel is really exciting, is that we don't know. We actually don't know. We can predict, but we actually don't know what the world will look like in 50 years' time, right? You could have capabilities that are developed. And I'm not just talking about AGI, singularity. I am also talking about other STEM developments that are happening parallelly. So if you think about hardware, robots, bionics, and massive advancements have happened in the last 50 years. So we don't know what the world will look like in 50 years. Now, the way I see that we should position our next generation or students or even ourselves is to teach, or is to learn how to learn. Because if you think about it now, the career path from, like I was talking about 80 years ago, the career path now looks very different. I have friends who are working in companies who, have their medical degree. They're still pursuing that, but they're also working in this biotech firm, helping a biotech startup, helping them, lending their expertise. So they have learned, like, these people are not computer scientists. Their expertise is the the biology, the medical
Medical,
field,
right?
how our bodies work, how our minds work. But they are bringing that expertise and they're learning how to interface that with technology, and they're working in a biotech firm. So I think things like that, we are already trying to, as adults, I think we are already trying to learn new things. So the biggest thing to teach our kids would be to learn how to learn, to be nimble on the feet, and to tell them that things will change and how we can adapt, and staying curious. I know these are considered as soft skills, but these are what that will actually help our civilization adapt, change path, and not think about the notion that we had not too long ago, right? Like I'm saying 50 years ago, it's like, okay, if you're an engineer, you start your career, you kind of be an engineer, and maybe like if you do well in 10 years time, you become an engineering manager, and then that, but things are going to be very different. So that's what makes it very exciting. But I think that will also help us position ourselves better as a civilization. The second,
I'll tell you the
uh,
second question.
okay, go ahead.
So, by the way, it was a great answer. Like, it applies now also, right? Like, you can't be in. You just need to try new things and you need to learn new things to be able to keep yourself at the best. And you can provide a lot of value in different fields, right? So, speaking about AGI and future, what does the future for Pop Smart Kids look like, and what is your next ambition?
Right now, it is. I like to take kind of smaller steps and then leaps, and then go from there. But right now, we are really focused on staying the course of teaching kids how to write, communicate, and how to speak with confidence, because those are skills that they will need no matter how the world changes, right? Because you will need to talk to people, you will need to convey your ideas. And the path for PopSmart Kids looks for now is to just expand and reach more parents, reach more students. So we started with a single center, and we recently opened a second one in person. We also offer classes online, and the goal right now is to just keep expanding that. We don't see ourselves adding new services, but staying in that service lane and just expanding and reaching more customers. My ambition, if I think about, and this is not too far away as well, like I don't think like this is like a 5-year goal or a 10-year goal for me. I think this is more of a one or similar goal. Is I do really think that students after a certain age, like I said, I always bring the example of math, because I feel like that there is a misconception that math is very, like it's very step by step, but writing is not like that. You just kind of, it's not though. Writing has its rules. Writing has, like, you need to learn one thing after the other. So kind of going back to the example that I was saying, like how you need to learn addition, subtraction, then kind of go into more complex courses like calculus. Similarly, I do want to offer a course that actually teach students after a certain grade or age how to use these AI platforms effectively, because there is a right way to use it, and any other way is just going to be disaster.
So good usage of AI, and then expanding is like the future, the next ambition of Smart Kids, right?
Yeah, just be able to serve more parents, reach more customers.
Reach more.
Yeah.
That's really good. So we've come to the last segment of the podcast. So this is one of the most. This is the question I ask to all of the guests who who hop into my podcast. So, do you really understand the purpose of your life on Earth, and what do you think is the meaning of life to you?
Oh, meaning of life. I don't like to take a really grand view of like, oh, I'm here for a purpose, I'm like, life is grand or anything like that. But to me, really, everyday things and connections, trust, these things matter more. And I don't like to think of impact as, at least for me, like that's my perspective, right? I don't like to think impact as like, oh, impacting the whole world, it changed everything. But I think if we can genuinely, truly work towards changing a person's life, right? And that can actually snowball. And the goal should never be, oh, I'm going to change the world. But I think the goal should be, yeah, I am doing something that I'm helping people. And one of those people actually really felt like it changed for them. So that's the meaning of life. That's, I think, is where we humans like draw connection from. You know, we love to live in groups, communities. Those things are important. I think that's what I see, and that's also kind of going back to how I see win for PopSmartKids, right? That when, and I'm not like, it's not the awards, it's not all of that. It's like when that one student doesn't want to leave, I'm like, okay, this is great. This is why I'm doing this. That's the purpose. So I really draw inspiration from those things.
That's really great. Love the way you put it. So come to the end of the segment. So I'll try to ship another podcast in with the next week. So for now, we have to say bye to Priyanka. Bye.
Bye, everybody. Thank you, Aishwarya. Thank you for having me.
It's totally fine. Thanks for taking the time for doing this. It's really great. It's really nice.
It was fun. Yeah,